In our interview with David Graeber, we talked about, I mentioned a poem that I like a lot, at least parts of it I like very, very much, and that is a poem written by the beat poet Diane DePrima called A Rant from a Cool Place. It was during a period that she was publishing what she called her revolutionary letters. She was very politically involved at that time in the 60s, or it's also called Rant sometimes. I've seen it published both ways, and I mentioned that I thought the line was, there is a war for the imagination, and I think that's right. So I just wanted to read a couple lines from it and see what you thought. And you can't tell me unless you want to tell me in the comments section on YouTube or on Twitter, and RJ Eskow. I'd be delighted to hear from you. But among other things, she says, and there are a lot of beautiful lines in it, but she says, without imagination, there is no memory. Without imagination, there is no sensation. Without imagination, there is no will, desire. Well, you know, those three ideas suggest why the forces that control us might very well want to make sure that we don't have an imagination or that we don't use it, because the idea that we might remember the injustices of the past or how we got to where we are today, the idea that we might sense and experience the horrible things that are happening to our brothers and sisters all around us and sometimes to ourselves, the idea that we might have the will or desire to change it would be, I would think, profoundly threatening to the status quo. And then DePrima writes, the war that matters is the war against the is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. She repeats that over and over. And she says, and I've quoted these lines in my writing, I think they're powerful, there is no way out of a spiritual battle. There is no way you can avoid taking sides. There is no way you cannot have a poetics. There is no way out of the spiritual battle. The war is the war against the imagination. You can't sign up as a conscientious objector. So, you know, this is it, you know, and I think she says elsewhere, I can't find it in front of me right now, but she says, no one can fight it for you, as I told David Graeber, no one can fight it but you. I can't think of any time in human history where the need to fight the war for the imagination has been greater than it is today. I'm sure there have been many moments when it's been equally great, but the fact is what we've lacked more than anything else in the last half century, in my opinion, is the ability to imagine a better world and then come together as a society, as a people, as a planet, and make that better world a reality. It just seems to me so self-evident that we've been trained to believe, as we talked about with David Graeber, that a better world is impossible, but it absolutely is. I mean, human history is a history of better worlds being forged out of seemingly unchangeable circumstances. I always say, you know, Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. Don't be Mandela in the 25th year thinking that you have to give up. The fact is some struggles may take longer than others, but we have the ability to change. We have the ability to succeed. We have the ability to prevail. And that's where our, as well, not just our anthropologists and our political writers or people who talk on radio, that's where everybody has a role to play, but that's where the artists have a role to play. That's where the poets have a role to play. That's where the songwriters and musicians and art and visual artists and everyone who elevates the human spirit has a role to play. And I'll end with this. It's why it seems to me that we make a tragic mistake in our education, whether it's primary, secondary, or college level education, when we devalue the arts, when we get music programs out of high schools, when we don't teach literature the way we used to, when we, you know, think that the purpose of a higher... I wrote about the fact that in 2012, both the Obama and Romney platforms indicated that, or suggested that the purpose of higher education was to train people for jobs. Well, education isn't just to train people for jobs. The poet said, you know, it is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. Education is to make people more human. Education is to make people better citizens, better mothers and fathers, better husbands and wives, better brothers and sisters, better members of the global human community. So we can't write off our social responsibility to make each other wiser, kinder, to strengthen each other's imagination, to strengthen each other's vision. There are many wars in front of us right now, but the war for imagination, for the imagination, is a war we should win.